Hi, welcome to the show today. I'm Kim Minert, your host, and I have in the studio with me Tony Scola. And Tony is a financial advisor, and he has a big story, and I can't wait to hear it. His company is called White Horse Wealth Management, and I'd like to start off, Tony, with telling me, how did you come up with the name White Horse Wealth Management?
Well, the short version is that I grew up off of White Horse Beach in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and moved away when I got older. And I recently moved back. Now that my kids are grown and out of the house, I moved back to my old home ground, stomping ground, and back to the same area. And it kind of represents my history. And people from the area recognize that. But also, I feel like the white horse symbolizes hope and a hero. So as a financial advisor, financial planner, somebody that's trying to help people improve their situation, it's a symbol of hope and trust. So I felt like it worked really well.
It does, and the handsome guy always rides up on the white horse to rescue the girl. I like that, yeah. And so how long have you been in the business of helping people with their money?
I started in 1990, so it'll be 35 years in July in the industry, but I started in insurance and working back office, policy writing, underwriting, subrogation, claims, investigations, and such before they relocated my department and I transitioned to sales. And that was kind of the beginning of my career. And I went from insurance sales into variable products, ran a private office with Prudential IFS for a few years, and then got recruited to Merrill Lynch, where I got my 7 and 65, which is for managed money, and was there when the towers came down in 2001. And at that point, I took that opportunity to go independent the first time, and then as my kids were growing up, I moved into running wealth management programs for banks, things like that, so I could also spend time raising them. And now that they're out, I've re-entered a private practice and building my business, working with individuals, families, business owners. For my final stage of my career.
Okay, you've got a wide wealth of experience coming into this. And,
a little bit.
Yeah, 35 years. So how long have you had White Horse Wealth Management?
It's been in the works for almost 4 years. I've been independent prior to 2024, which is when I rebranded with Producer's Prospect, and we came up with the idea of White Horse and redeveloping that as I moved back to Massachusetts.
Okay, so how do you get the word out about your practice? What do you do to spread the word? And do you have a niche that you work with? I know you did say small business and families.
I really enjoy working with people in that later stage, that fragile 10-year, or the fragile decade, as they call it, the 5 years approaching retirement and the 5 years after, because it's the most important time, I think, in people's financial lives. They work really hard to accumulate their assets. And I found, I think it was around 2005, when I was working with people, that the thing I got back a lot from them was, I used to hear from my advisor all the time when I was contributing to my accounts, but now that I'm getting ready to take withdrawals, I'm not getting calls back. And I realized that the help they wanted wasn't just in how to position their assets for success, but how to access them and really enjoy the fruits of their labor, and eliminate a lot of the fears that come along with not working anymore, not having that income that you get from, getting up every morning and going to work and relying on everything that you've amassed up to that point to support yourself.
Right. And one of the biggest fears people have, from what I understand, is that they will run out of money.
That's true. And that's the hardest part, because that's the variable that it's literally impossible to put a timetable or a number on. You never know when it's going to be. It could be, right around. I've had clients that say, if family health history is bad, I don't plan to live that long, but they do, and then they could potentially run out. And others that, and truthfully, that's what kind of drove me to this. I know everybody likes to say what was kind of a defining moment in your career. Was I worked with a woman who came in, and she she wanted help repositioning. And the hard part for me was I didn't realize it at first, but it was because she had just entered retirement, and she told me the story how she and her husband had worked a very long time and did everything right. They paid down their debts, they accumulated assets, they had a plan. And a few weeks after they retired together, he got up from the breakfast table, took a few steps, and had a heart attack right in front of her. And so now, in addition to having to reevaluate her entire retirement future alone now, she had a heartbreaking story that really has resonated with me for everything I do at this point, is that she said, the sad part isn't that I've lost him, but that we never got to do what we always talked about doing. And that's something that a lot of people don't take into consideration what they're going to do in retirement. And that's one area that I like to work with folks on. But what was really, I'm going to get a little emotional on this.
Yeah.
But I asked her, well, what was it that you never got to do? And she said, well, we always talked about retiring and sitting on our porch in our rockers and holding hands and watching the sunset. And it just broke my heart.
Yeah.
Because, that's something she could have done, or they could have done every day, but their focus was on getting there. So they didn't have the opportunity to live life in between. And that's really the driving force behind what motivates me in my business, is to help people live their lives and not worry about the things that get in the way of having those experiences with people while we're here.
Right. And sounds like you do not just financial planning, but life planning and helping people prioritize those things that really matter.
Absolutely. I start with that before I even look at assets, because if people don't know what's important to them and what they want out of what they have to work with, and how much they have is kind of irrelevant. Everybody's just focused on the number and not what that can do for you. So I think that's one of the big differences. A lot of people say that they're really surprised after meeting with me, that they've never spoken with an advisor that's engaged them in that way.
Yeah, and I think asking people those questions that they don't maybe ask themselves because they're so busy. People are so busy, and they don't have the time to sit and ask themselves those questions. So when you ask them, it brings a whole new light to their financial future.
Right, and it's hard because, people are a little bit, finances and money are a very private topic, and it's something a lot of people don't really get a lot of education or training on. And usually what people bring to the table is what they've heard from the media or friends or family, or you should do this or you should do that. But I try to explain to them that everybody's situation is different, and getting advice from somebody without knowing what their situation isn't really going to help you, because especially with investments, people always say, well, my friend is doing this, my friend is doing that. And I always ask them right out of the gate, well, tell me about your friend, because that might tell me why they're doing that, and then I can explain why you're not doing that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So,
and as a planner, I think it's helpful that you can find out the big picture. And do you find people are comfortable right away? Do you establish rapport with them pretty quickly, and they're able to open up and tell you what's going on in their life for real, or do you find them hiding things?
Well, I think being from New England, there's the term the old Yankee New Englander. There is a certain level of standoffishness or privacy you've got to kind of overcome. And, I respect that. I have a bit of that myself, having grown up there my entire life. But it is, I think, when they realize that you're looking out for them and that you're not trying to make a sale or push a product or, lead them into something that's not in their best interest, it opens the floodgates. So you get a lot of information. And that's another thing that I really like about that is I just feel like I have a really deep relationship with the people I work with, because they trust me with things that they might not share with, the closest people in their lives. And that means a lot. And I take that seriously, that level of trust.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So you said your kids are out of the house. How many of those
I've got
have?
two.
Two? Okay.
Yep. They're going to be turning 19 and 20 in just a couple months here, so they're on their
And
own.
they're out of the house at that age?
Yeah, yep. Well, my oldest was planning to go in the military out of high school and decided to wait and see how things went with things going on in the world, which I have a military background myself. I was in the Army for 8 years. And I told him it might be good to assess situation before just jumping into anything. And he was lucky enough to land a job with somebody who's really taking care of him in a career that he really enjoys. He's 100% self-sustaining. At 18, he's got a house, a car.
Well, congratulations.
I know. I'm very proud of him. I told him I would like to see him get continue his education at his pace, but in the meantime, he works hard and he's very, very responsible. So I'm really proud of that. And his younger brother is in school full time right now. So when I say he's out, he likes to think that he's independent, even though he's
still
quite
got
as
one
independent
foot
as
in
his
the
older
nest.
brother. Yeah, he's still a little bit reliant on support, but he's doing a great job as well. So,
Well, congratulations. I
Thank you.
think a family and raising successful kids is one of the hardest things that we do in life
Oh, for
as
sure.
parents. And if we can get them.
Well, I have a lot of friends that say that, and as
Launched.
their kids are getting close to empty nesting too, that they're concerned about that and the time they have. And I said, I that's where I consider myself lucky. I don't see them or talk to them as much as I would like, but the fact that I do have very regular communications and that they actually contact me on a regular basis about being able to come home and visit means a lot. It means I must have done something right.
I think you did. I think you've done a lot right. And
Thank you.
I'm really thrilled to have you on the show and spotlight your business, White Horse Wealth Management. And so thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.